Hi, my name is René Islas. I'm the Executive Director of the National Association for Gifted Children. Really excited today to be here with Checker Finn and Brandon Wright to talk a little bit about a brand new book that's calling serious attention to the needs of gifted and talented students. I'm going to ask a question just really quickly about you document many of the different countries and how they're focusing on gifted and talented education. Are there specific lessons that you've learned from them that can be applied to the United States?
Sure, there are. In fact, we of course picked countries that looked like they were doing pretty well at the high end on measures like PISA and TIMSS, and then we looked closer, and they're also doing better than we are on getting more disadvantaged kids into the population of high achievers, which is a sort of double whammy for the U.S. I think maybe the single most important lesson is the value of universal screening at a young age, looking at every single kid in the population to see whether he or she is either doing very well already or shows signs of being able to do very well, and then figuring out what you're going to do extra for those kids, whether it's acceleration or enrichment or a separate school or a separate teacher or a sophisticated form of ability grouping. I think there are many options, but universal screening has also been shown by a couple of very able young American economists to produce a more diverse body of high-achieving kids than if you sit around and wait for pushy parents or teachers to spot. This is an important lesson, and I think it may be the biggest takeaway.
So universal screening also creates an opportunity for using local-based norms to identify students. Is that something that you're thinking about?
Even school-level norms. I mean, let's start in the United States by taking advantage of the fact that every third grader on up through 8th grade is taking a test at the end of every grade in English and math. That right there is some data on who's doing well on those tests starting in 3rd grade. And not just doing well across your state, doing well in your school or this neighborhood or this town. So that we're not sort of biasing the results according to the whole population. I think this is a great opportunity to put in the best achievers in a particular school, and then don't stop there. Ask the teachers who else in the school besides the high achievers at the end of 3rd grade. Have that gleam in the eye that suggests that they too could become high achievers. I'm not suggesting that we just rely on tests, but I'm also suggesting that we not just rely on teacher identification or pushy parents.
So NAGC just released its State of the States and State of the Nation. And what we found, not surprising, it's a continuation of what we've seen over time, but there's very little monitoring and identification of what's happening with the gifted child. Are there specific things that can happen at the federal level that we should do to increase monitoring, transparency of how students are being?
Well, you're surely right about the bad monitoring, and even sometimes when it's monitored, it doesn't happen. That is to say, we know that 15% of the kids in Ohio are identified as gifted, but we also know from monitoring that only about 3% of them are being served by any version of gifted education. So an awful lot are not being. The likeliest thing to come out of Washington in the near future is going to be turning back to the states the obligation to construct the accountability system for K-12 education. There's going to remain a testing requirement, but I think states are going to be where the action is in terms of how the accountability system works. And that is a huge opportunity to build in what some people call a growth model, what you can more simply call everybody's gains across the whole spectrum of achievement need to be part of what's looked at. And once you're looking for that, once you're measuring that, in effect, you've got a monitoring system. Because you're going to be able to look at the kid who was at, let's call it the 85th percentile last year, or the 100 kids who were at the 85th percentile last year, and ask how many of them are still in the 85th or better percentile. If they're not, you're monitoring the system. It's not doing well by them. And you can look into why and how to do it better. So yes, I think this is a huge state opportunity, but of course that also carries the familiar risk of states doing this in a very uneven or haphazard way.
So Brandon, when you were conducting this research for this book and looking at different countries, one of the issues that we have in the United States is just the fear of calling anyone gifted. Right? We're all equal. How did these countries kind of transcend that reluctance to look for giftedness and to address the giftedness in those students?
Well, yeah. So you'll see in our book that we don't call these kids gifted kids, right? We call them high ability. Sometimes we call them scorers, top performers. Part of that, right, is in gifted education. Not everyone agrees on what a gifted kid is, right? And so we tried to use kind of a number of terms. But when you look at other countries, right, again, it depends on where you go. Right? Singapore tends to use an IQ test, right? Germany uses some IQ tests. Other places like Japan kind of use exams to siphon kids into different schools. You see that in Korea too, right? So I guess you can take from these approaches to identifying kids what exactly these countries mean when they separate kids into high school groups, right? But yeah.
One other term that we encountered in several European countries that I know is used sometimes in the U.S. is the phrase talent development. And I think that's got a much more, should we say, politically acceptable feel to it than the phrase gifted and talented. Gifted and talented sort of sounds like you were born that way. And a lot of Americans sort of don't like that feel. But talent, everybody's got some talent, and cultivating talent at the high end as well as everywhere else across the spectrum is something that we should be doing.
So the point is maybe some of these countries valued high performance and excellence more than the United States has emphasized in the past or in recent history. Is that true?
Recent history for sure. I think we did a better job of this in the 50s and 60s when we talked about things like John Gardner's famous phrase, "Can we be equal and excellent too?" A kind of balancing act, a kind of tension there, as opposed to just equal, and forget the excellence part. And yeah, other countries value it in the culture, in the parents, in the crush to get into universities, in the crush to get good jobs. It's not always a sort of noble value. It's often a self-serving value. That's okay. I want my kid to have a fair shake at getting into the good university. In the U.S., we have a lot of families that don't necessarily know that they should be doing that. And so I think we actually put a heavier burden on the formal education system to do more of that. And I think we need to have an education system that rises to that challenge.
Yeah, you also see, right, that in places like in Asian countries that we saw, right, they don't really think of different kids as being smarter than other kids, right? They believe culturally, right, that anyone who works hard enough can get to point X, right? Whereas here, it seems like the more predominant cultural belief is you either have it or you don't. And it's not.
And that's a problem, because that means that people then get very squeamish about favoring the fortunate, almost like a top 1% anxiety in the economic sphere. Whereas a striving concept, an achievement concept, rather than a you were born lucky concept, I think is be a valuable cultural shift for us in education.
So it's interesting. It's a messaging and cultural shift.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it is. And I think there's your work cut out for you.
Well, we're trying to build a movement, obviously, to focus on the needs of students with extraordinary talents and how to develop them. And whether they have it now, whether it's hidden, we need to discover it, and we need to support them in achieving their highest potential. So thank you for being with us.
Happy to do it. And all the best. You've got work cut out for you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you.